I'm here in China right now making this video, and one of the devotees has a question, which is a common question here, is how to relate Krishna consciousness to one's family. Because in this culture, a lot of family members don't want to hear anything about it, or there's a lot of ignorance. They actually think if you don't eat meat, you can't be healthy. One devotee said she was trying to help her husband, and her husband said, just don't talk about it. I don't want to hear anything about it. And so there's a lot of resistance. And, you know, it's a very ancient culture, and so a lot of traditions have been around for a long time. Not like America. They've only been around a few hundred years, and American culture is always changing. But in more traditional cultures, it's harder to change. So how do you deal with this? And I think one of the realizations that many devotees have is you don't deal with it. After trying to deal with it and failing, they realize it's just disturbing the relationship. So if you want the relationship, if you want to at least have a relationship, then you're probably going to have to not talk about these things. And many of us have found that when we don't talk about these things, later, in due course of time, it becomes easier to talk about these things because we weren't talking about them. We weren't trying to push it down their throats. And naturally, when you first become a devotee, you're so excited about Krishna consciousness, you want to share it with everyone. Because you love your family, you want to share it with them. And if they're eating meat or drinking alcohol, it's really hard to see that. But it's really an exercise in detachment. And it's the same when we're preaching. Sometimes you meet someone and you're cultivating them and you're developing attachment for them, and they're attached to you and they're advancing, and then all of a sudden you get a letter and they said, I went off and got drunk and had a hamburger, and it's discouraging, to say the least. Gurus have disciples who leave, never communicate with them again. It was like you just lost a son or a daughter. And really, we can't exist within relationships like this unless there's some degree of detachment that this person ultimately is going to decide what they're going to decide. It's their choice, and I can only try to help them. I can only give them good instruction, good advice, and ultimately they have their life, they have their karma. It's the same thing with children. You know, you give them the best you can give them, but they're going to make their own decisions, and they're going to be responsible for the results of those decisions. Today, we're having class, and one of the devotees said, after I preach, I get drained, and said, why is that? And I said, I think you're getting emotionally involved in people's lives. When they're telling you their problems, they start to become your problems, and then you suffer like they're suffering. So after dealing with everyone's problems, you're drained. As opposed to detaching and understanding you've done your best to guide them, they're going to have to make their own decisions. Otherwise, pretty much we'll go crazy, because we all want everything to be a certain way, and it can't be that way. And so, I know in my own life, my mother never accepted my Krishna consciousness, and I wanted her to accept it. I really, really wanted. It was one of my most cherished desires, is she would just accept. And I think it was also a thing of the past, because when I became a hippie, she didn't accept it. When I became a devotee, she'd rather I be a hippie. That was more acceptable. And so there was nothing I could do. And so even though I wanted her to appreciate what I was doing, it was impossible. And of course, as we know, if we become Krishna conscious, then our family will benefit. And the more Krishna conscious we become, more generations of family will benefit. So really, ultimately, that's the best service we can do. And we take shelter in knowing that if I can't help them directly, at least I can help them this way directly by becoming Krishna conscious. So not only me becoming Krishna conscious, it's going to help all the people in my family. And so that's the best, and that's the best service I can do. What better service could I do to my family than help them become free from their karma and become liberated in the next life? And maybe become devotees in their next life. Well, Prabhupada was asked, he said, Prabhupada, what does it mean that my family members become liberated? And Prabhupada said, that means they become devotees in their next life. So my mother died way back in 1976. So that means she would be 43 now. And so wherever I go and I see women around that age, I say, when were you born? What month? What year? I said, maybe you're my mother. And come back. There's actually one devotee, I always tell her, because she's that age, I say, I think you're my mother. She says, why do you say that? I don't know. But you're the age my mother would be now. So we take shelter in knowing, at least Prabhupada said, our relatives, our parents, husbands, wives, if they're not devotees, they'll become devotees in their next life. And so, if they're not devotees now, then at least you can be happy knowing they'll be devotees in their next life. Hare Krishna.